The Quest for an Antidote, Curing Imposter Syndrome in Tech. Sarvenaz is Vice President of Technology at American Express, where she leads global web engineering, enterprise services, loyalty, and site reliability engineering. She holds a BS and MS in computer science and an executive MBA. Based in New York, she's a nonprofit leader, a published author, and a professional speaker. Welcome, Sarvenaz. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here.
Beautiful, beautiful. It's my pleasure to facilitate this conversation with you. I just want to thank you in advance for taking time to speak with the Power to Fly community today. And we're so happy to have you here to learn more about what to do to make tech more welcoming and less intimidating for all. But before we get started with questions, and I want to also invite folks who are tuning in live to drop their questions in the chat or any reflections, as well as I want to hold a couple minutes towards the end to make sure we get to some of your questions. But before we get to questions, we'd love to hear more about you. So can you please share a little bit about your career journey, how you got to be in the position you're in today, and maybe throw in a fun fact about yourself that you think our audience would like to hear?
Oh, definitely. So do you want the long career path or the very quick 30-second career path?
I would say, you know what, I'm interested in the long, but for time's sake, 'cause I know we got some awesome questions, give us, the short, sweet, and then I will definitely ask you, if folks want to connect with you or, learn more about your story, maybe you can shout that out on how people can connect with you later to get the longer version.
That would be great. Okay. So the quick version is right after college, I went into a leadership rotational program that I was really interested in because the whole point was to expedite your growth. And that was 4 different 6-month rotations. If you made it through there, you were ready for anything. And then I went into program and project management and took on my first people leader role, leading research and development. Then I did move over to AMEX in 2018 and started taking on more tech modernization work. I applied to be a VP of credit and collections in 2020. And now I'm in the job that I have now since last June. Oh, and you said fun fact. So everyone, maybe I'll do 2. Everyone in my family, nuclear family, is born in a different country. So mine is Germany, born and raised. And then I recently, a couple years ago, became yoga certified. And I love to sometimes do free teaching sessions with my tech teams because, we all need what yoga has to offer. So that's a very unexpected, fun side hobby of mine.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And you know what? I love because you can invite people to find more space in their mind, to be more grounded in themselves, to try to connect with their authentic selves more. So I love speaking about the importance of emotional intelligence at work and at play. And I feel like what you share with your team is essentially helping people on your team, practice emotional intelligence a little just by being connected with our breath more, or, being more connected to our body. We're in these screens and we forget that we're human. And I can imagine that it's even, more difficult for folks like you who have had this trajectory of, being building awesome things, in this digital space. So thank you for the fun fact. Actually, I really do appreciate that. I mean, we get really technical here, but I want to make sure that we keep the human in the conversation. All right. So as your bio speaks about you, you have, lots of gifts. We would love to know about your experience as the keynote speaker at Athenahex last year, and tell us what that is. What is Athenahex, and why is this important for diversity in tech?
Oh, yes. Athenahex was such a wonderful event to participate in. It's a beginner-friendly, non-intimidating hackathon for women and non-binary students in tech. And on top of coming together to build something new, their event includes workshops, mentorship, tech talks, social activities. And they have this wonderful motto of no experience necessary, you just need passion. And what I love about that motto is it applies to so much more than just hackathons. It applies to students taking their first programming course, to graduates taking their first jobs, and then to so many stages of your career. And knowing that was their motto, during my keynote, I wanted to convey that it's okay to feel overwhelmed in an introductory course. It's okay if your first time trying isn't as fast as a classmate who's been, coding since middle school. And what matters in the long run is that passion and that effort. And that kind of goes into the main headline of today, which is like imposter syndrome. That uncertainty and intimidation that comes from it, it honestly is almost all the time traced back to unnecessarily comparing yourself with others. And one of the best lessons I ever learned, luckily early in college, is to stop trying to be the best compared to others. Like, just stop trying to be number one. Only one person can be number one. Instead, you only need to be excellent at what you're doing, because every single person on your team can be excellent at what they're doing. It's not even a competition at that point. And, then if you still feel imposter syndrome because you're not living up to your own definition, well, then there's concrete steps you can take. Whereas if your view is dependent on being better than someone else or knowing more than someone else, it's really hard to control that outcome.
I love that. And so again, emotional intelligence, I love speaking about outside of all the technical, important technical talks that we need to have. I love speaking about emotional intelligence. And then the other factor that I think you're hinting on as well, I love speaking about, how, and asking, folks like you questions, how we can start to decolonize the mind a little more. I mean, I feel like we have a lot of social norms that define success, for example. And then that creates, okay, success means I need to be like looking like this person. So you have that, then comparison starts to happen, and then shaming starts to happen. And then we forget how to connect with our authentic selves. So I really appreciate you sharing, the importance of, not comparing, and to know that someone, a dear friend of mine actually told me this acronym that I want to throw that out there to you and anyone who's listening now. So fail, first attempt in learning. And then I think that makes it just a little easier to say, okay, like, let me just give myself a little space, and I don't need to put so much pressure on arriving to a place that maybe I need to be somewhere else, if I can just, surround myself with folks who are going to bring out the best in me and the work that I do. And I think that would just, that also shapes teams and companies. And I just, have this bigger vision of how that can be very impactful. So I know I'm going deep there, but I wanted to comment.
No, I'm going to remember that one. It also reminds me of one where it's like, I never lose. I either win or I learn. So those are the options.
I love that. And not saying, of course we set the caliber high. We go for what we want. We know who we are before we do any of that, so that, we don't have to, try so much to deconstruct imposter syndrome. Because yes, things are changing. I think in our parents' generations, we wouldn't even be having the opportunity to have this conversation. So we have to be changing with the times as well. All right. So you stated that you never attended any kind of hackathon when you were in undergrad because you felt intimidated. What might have made you feel more confident to attend?
Oh, yeah. I actually kicked off my keynote that way, to hundreds of people doing their first hackathon saying, I never did one, and how much I admired them for that. But, there's a couple of factors. And when I was thinking about it, it's nice that in the decades since I've been in college, a lot of these have been taken into consideration. And that made me really happy to come to that realization. See, the primary reason for me back in the day, I feel like it's not that long ago, but I want to say back in the day, the hackathons, they weren't as common. And the ones that happened, they were pretty competitive. I remember once as a freshman, I saw a sign and it was for team auditions. And I figured with my single Java programming course and no programming experience before college, I was probably not going to be anyone's first pick or second pick or third pick. So obviously I didn't even go to the auditions. But now I see beginner friendly categories in hackathons. I see like fun ways that people get matched up with other newbies. I see entire hackathons for first timers, hackathons with learning opportunities, mentoring, all that. And what I love about, like, take our hackathons internally at AMEX. We have so many resources that we provide ahead of time to make people feel comfortable, ready for the main event, and just that nothing's really unexpected and that they have the support they need. Like one thing I love is we have one of our hackathons usually during the summer when our interns are there. And you would think that the interns would shy away, but every year, without a doubt, they go all in. They multiple intern teams sign up, and then they come up with these really creative projects. And so, what do you know? I'm actually not intimidated by the idea of participating in hackathons that I see today, both inside AMEX and then external ones like Athenahex. So I feel like the progress is really there.
I love that. And you just teed me up nicely to go to the next question. So if someone's feeling imposter syndrome, does it ever end? Can they look forward to an end date, or, is it this constantly evolving thing that hopefully, gets better and lessens, more and more? And I'd love for you to kind of tie that response into, have you ever experienced imposter syndrome in American Express? If you can be, transparent there. And, how, no pressure. And just a little bit more about how you've been able to elevate your career within American Express.
Oh yeah. I feel like one of the most important places to start is acknowledging that it's like everybody feels this. And so I was researching and I kept finding like imposter syndrome tied to women. And then I kept researching some more, and then there are newer studies happening that show, one, men might even be feeling it more than women. And it's not, it really impacts everyone. I was talking to this super impressive VP the other day. Like when I think of him, I think of like expert architect. And he came to me with a question just on the side. And he's like, I have an idea. What do you think? And I was like, you should ask this in our main forum, because it's a good idea. He's like, well, I don't want them to think I'm stupid. And I'm like, wait, you like expert of everything don't want our junior engineers to think you're, and so it's kind of like, I don't think he said stupid, but it's kind of like, we all feel it. And so here's the thing, whenever I experience it, which I do for sure, the number one response I found to be very helpful is I immediately invest in learning. Because like I said, I like to go for excellence in myself, not comparisons. But if there's a topic I need at work and I feel like I either got rusty or anything like that, as soon as I start relearning the fundamentals, like start with the beginner course, do something hands-on, my confidence comes back so quickly. And then there's a second lesson I learned when I took on my first VP role at AMEX. It was like many systems, but some of the systems had technologies that were brand new to me. And what I realized is I'm just going to try this approach where I admit that I don't know anything about it, and then just ask for help. And what I found is not only that I learned faster, but I forged a lot stronger relationships with my team in the process. Okay, so here's what I did. I joined a team. Like we had probably about 12 to 15 Scrum teams. So maybe like 6 to 10 member teams. I joined one. I said, hey, I'm just a regular engineer for the next 2 weeks. And I was upfront with them that I would need their help. And so I delivered, thankfully. I learned a lot. I learned about the team culture and process, but I also bonded really well because I was vulnerable with them and they helped me. And it's kind of this reverse. Like one of our junior engineers was one of my best coaches. It's like this reverse mentorship that was really, really wonderful. So it's really, when it comes down to it, just learn. It's like, take the time to learn, take the time for others to help you learn, and it goes away.
So I'm a big fan of mentorship and sponsorship. That's we need a whole nother 30 minutes to talk about that. But a huge fan of mentorship and reverse mentorship. And actually, the example that you laid out so beautifully. And it can happen in different spaces, right? In different ways. But I love that it was, you were both able to nurture each other by doing that, reverse mentorship dynamic. And again, emotional intelligence, that vulnerability piece, being able to empathize and also, experiment with great intentions, and practice active listening. You mentioned something about like going back to the basics, right? To just like, and it's like, if I think of, I don't know, if I look at something that I feel like I do really well, it's always specifically like, let's say with my body, I'm going to take my body for an example. Life happens, we get older, we form habits, and maybe our alignment changes a little bit. So I'm like going to see some doctors these days, and they're like, okay, going to the chiropractor is like cracking my whole body. So it's gotten me interested in like, let me learn how to re-walk, like how can I walk and sit in the most, healthy way so that I'm like even more kind to and of course I know how to walk. Of course I know how to sit, but I'm just going to start from the basics again. Like, okay, what do I do, and try to practice that. And again, with practice, also, being kind to ourselves, because if we're not, we're always putting ourselves in a place of, judgment, whether that be self-judgment or judging other people, and just bringing us back to this like illusory high standard of what success means. And it's like, yeah, but if I haven't seen someone like myself represented, then I already have a false perspective of what success is, because I don't see someone that, that I can identify with. So, the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging space is really, fascinating to me. And I really appreciate your contribution just for being who you are and expressing yourself the way that you do in this role. So thank you. That was just me giving you praise. I was doing my emoji hand praise, but I wanted to shout you out as well. All right. So let's get back to a little bit more about American Express. So can you tell us about American Express's approach to obtaining and retaining diverse talent, particularly the networking and mentorship initiatives?
Ooh, yes. Yes, that's on everyone's mind these days, which makes me very happy, actually. And what I'll say that AMEX does well is intentionality. So we call them our blue box values. We have a list of values, but two of them are we embrace diversity and we stand for inclusion. And they're not just high in the cloud values. You can see goals linked to them at every level of the company. And I just love that. And when it comes to finding diverse talent, we do not try to go at it alone, because honestly, there's so many incredible organizations, programs, initiatives that align with our values. And so we just seek to foster these type of partnerships, whether it's like, wonderful events like this one with Power to Fly, or partnering with boot camps who make obtaining tech skills more accessible, or partnering with local community colleges on internship programs for underrepresented students. We just did a whole cohort of that. We're just constantly looking for ways to broaden our reach. And as for mentorship, wow, Amex, they didn't pay me to say this, like they actually, I feel like they do it so well because they have a variety of programs for different purposes and different outcomes that you can be nominated for. And when I joined as a director, I got nominated over the course of about 18 months for two of them, and they made such a huge impact in my career. There's this quote I love. I really wish I remembered where I first heard it, but it's along the lines of people will want to invest in themselves if they feel like others are investing in them. And that's exactly how I felt at Amex. It was like this nonstop drive to invest in myself because they wanted to do the same. And so now I feel like I've come full circle, because I always make sure that I'm the one volunteering for the programs. I'm the one making sure that I'm becoming a mentor, and it's kind of a nice loop of paying it forward.
I love that. Paying it forward should just be a part of everyone's job description. I think that would like maybe force more people to pay it forward and not wait for someone else to do it, because it can be very passive, right? It's like, oh, I don't have time, or, I'm not really, I don't consider myself an activist. And it's like, but again, I feel like that might even be imposter syndrome with mentorships. Like, just, commit to it. Yeah. That's just coming to mind now.
It's so true. But anyone's qualified. Like I tell our new hires who were interns, I'm like, you were an intern and you got an offer. So you should be mentoring next year's interns, because you're the one who knows best how to do it. Not me. I don't remember how to get an internship, So it's just knowing what expertise you have that you can share.
Awesome. So I see we've got some questions coming up in the chat. So one is, what are some steps to booster my self-confidence after a really bad work experience that really shook my confidence?
Oh man. Yeah. As soon as you say that, like triggers my own experiences. And it's weird how I set really high expectations for myself. So even when things go minorly wrong, I kind of sulk excessively. And there's a couple things that work for me. So what I'd say first is find out, like, again, reflection is going to be the core of a lot of my answers when it comes to dealing with emotions and all that. So reflect in which people make you feel better, reflect in what activities make you feel like purpose outside of work. That's a big one. You know, your identity, if it's too closely tied to your work, you will always suffer from that. And so if you have, you know, your friends separate from work, if you have your life separate from work, it's really helpful. But, you know, I feel like I have this whole, like, if I've had a bad day, step one, I'm going to my husband and I'm going to talk it out with him. And he's also in the tech field, so he can relate to me sometimes. Two, I love going on walks, you know, just put in some music, take a long walk, and do the things you love. It's not going to be a quick fix. So really, it's just make sure that you don't stay on your own, in your own head only, and try different things out. But it's hard. Will I ever go easy on myself? I don't think so. But I'll be more intentional.
Well, you have these practices that you include. So my partner also is very, I don't know we can't find this translation in English. It's exigente. She's very like, you know, I don't know, strict with herself, I guess you would say. And I don't know, I'm learning a lot just by watching her, and I'm kind of like, let's throw the colors in the sky and see what comes down, and then let's do that, you know, like I'm pretty more, I don't know, more connected with my emotional intelligence, that I would say. And I mean, it's really interesting because everyone is on their own journey. But I love that you're incorporating like walks, you know, and just getting like moving in your body, coming back to your body, listening to music, or speaking with someone that, you know, you confide in and know that, you know, won't judge you. This is, you know, just helping to release. I appreciate that. And I hope that helped whoever answered that or asked that question. So we have another question from the audience. Are there any key triggers or a certain age that people are more prone to get imposter syndrome?
Ooh, well, I'll tell you, whenever it's more common for me is when I'm put into a new experience where I'm meeting a lot of new people and I don't know what to expect from them. So I have to remind myself, like, I may be strict on myself, but people, they're not looking, you know, they have good intentions. And so that is a really important and helpful step one. The second one, that when I took my first job leading officially, like I was someone's official people leader, it was a research and development team, and everyone on the team had decades of specialized expertise. We were like, part of our research and development, we had a whole category of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I'm like, how do I lead people who know eons more than I do? And so I confided in a mentor, and this is what I always recommend, like the specifics of your challenges, you need to find the right mentors for. So I asked my mentor, she said, I went through the same thing, and you won't believe it. She not only was less experienced than her team, but her team was talking about her behind her back about it, saying like, how come she got this job when so-and-so is more qualified? And so she did something that is so courageous. Like it was a moment for me. She, in their first team meeting, went to them and called it out. She said, hey, I know all of you know more than I do, but, and then she said, I want to help all of you succeed, but I can't do that unless you teach me. So it's more like, forget needing to know more and see yourself more as that servant leader. You want to help the team succeed, and you'll do that in any way possible, not by knowing more, but by knowing how to help them. And man, that's just changed my whole approach since then.
That's beautiful. I feel like Yeah, if I feel, I mean, it was such a romantic statement. Like, I feel like it's something from a film or something, that's just like, oh yes, preach. I love that. Um, so, to be a leader of service, a servant leader, you said.
Servant leader, yeah.
Servant leader. Yes, I love that as well. Wow, so many nuggets you're dropping today. We've only got 4 more minutes. I wish we had you on longer. But let's see, what else can we talk about today? Is there something that you would like? Okay, let's go back in time.
Okay.
Did that Sarvenaz before, you knew who you were. Right, you're figuring out. I mean, maybe you still are. Some of us still are, and I think that's one of the things that's a continual learning, right? We have these fixed posts that like help us understand ourselves better, right? Whatever roles we have in our jobs and our community and things like that, but we're continuing to learn about ourselves all day. But let's go back in time. Let's say even before university. What's one piece of advice you would give your younger self? Just to maybe lighten up the load a little bit so that maybe you wouldn't, you would know a little bit more about how to combat imposter syndrome.
So many things came to mind. So first of all, I occasionally journal and highly recommend it. So there was this one journal prompt that I did a while ago. It was write a letter to your high school self, giving advice from your future self. And it was way more emotional than I thought it'd be, but it was really wonderful. So forget my advice to myself. Everyone do this for yourself. But I remember writing in it, like, you're going to hear so many people judging what you do. So if I studied instead of partying, I was judged. And I was like, am I missing out? Anyway, know that if you're doing what makes you happy, like I was happy to achieve, I was happy to study, just embrace being happy with what you're doing. And at the same time, know that another awesome quote, your life doesn't need to be a novel. It can be a collection of poems. So what that means is I had a phase in high school where I was very competitively playing volleyball. And senior year, I was going to go play volleyball in college, like Division I, all this. And I hurt my shoulder real bad. And suddenly, like, my identity as a volleyball player was gone. And it was so hard. And that's the first time I realized, like, how important it is not to tie your identity too much to one thing that can change. Because that's when I stopped volleyball and I went into computer science. Like, that's the best thing that happened to me for my career. Who knows what I would have done otherwise. So a collection of poems. You don't need to be the same thing your whole life for it to be a wonderful life.
Snaps to that. What a beautiful way to end this conversation. I wish we had more time. I just love your perspective. Like some of the words I use when I have to introduce myself or write a bio. I usually put that life is poetry in motion. So I try to create poetry. And so I really appreciate the sentiment there. Thank you so much for sharing knowledge with us today. Can you remind people or let people know, because I don't think you said in the beginning, if they can, be in touch with you, or if you have some projects you're excited to share, you can take this last, share anything else about yourself and how to connect.
Oh, yes. Please reach out. You can on LinkedIn, or honestly, I'll even provide my email after the fact. And, my team is hiring quite a few roles. So if you're excited about what you heard, you want to be part of it, then please apply and reach out.